1173, some Italian stoneworkers started laying out stones in a large depression on the grounds of the local cathedral. Now, these stones were going to be the base of a new bell tower. Well, they laid this base of stones and marble blocks, mortared all together with lime, and they began to build this tower. Well, back in those days, building a new bell tower was a pretty major undertaking. In fact, with a couple of long construction delays for wars and other political stuff, it took almost a century, 100 years, for them to reach the 7th floor of this building. Bell tower's got to be tall, right? Well, when they got to the 7th floor, the workers confirmed what the people in the neighborhoods had been talking about for a long time. This tower was clearly tipping. It was almost 3 feet out of vertical at the edge of the 7th floor. Over the next 500 years, this tower saw a parade of architects and engineers all trying to figure out what they could do to keep this building from falling over. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is supposedly stabilized today. It's not supposed to lean any further for at least the next 200 years. That's what they say. But that came at enormous expense. Millions and millions and millions of dollars, and some major technological investment. You know, it makes me wonder if those first stone workers that August who had been laying out those stones for the foundation, if they might have done something different if they knew. I mean, the plot of land that they chose, it was ground that had been reclaimed from an old estuary. This whole area had been underwater, so the soil itself was made up of clay and sand and seashells. Strong enough to stand on, strong enough to build a house on. Not strong enough for a 183-foot tall stone tower with 23,000 pounds of bells in the belfry. Foundation is really important. If you don't pick the right foundation, if you don't invest in preparing that foundation, everything you build is in jeopardy. This is true in our spiritual lives as well. Jesus told this story about 2 men building 2 different houses. You know, one of them chose to build his house right down on the beach, you know, great view, great access, nice place. And the other guy chose to build his house a little ways back up on a rocky outcropping. And they both built their houses, both got them finished, moved in, and things were great. They looked wonderful until the storm came. The rains came down, the floods came up, the wind battered the houses, and the house on the sand collapsed. It had no sure foundation. Jesus said that we're like this, you and me. He said that when we hear his words and listen to them and obey them, we're like the guy building on the rocks. And when we don't listen to his words, or when we listen to them but don't obey them, don't do them, we're like the guy who built his house on the sand. Things may look good now, but when the storm comes, things are going to come crashing down. Now, at Bridge City, we call this whole spiritual foundation thing Circle One. This is the space in your life where you respond to God in a personal way. It's where you listen for his voice in the words of Scripture and share your heart with him in prayer and meditate and worship and reflect and express your heart to God in creative ways. And this time spent regularly, hopefully every day, is the critical process of building your spiritual foundation. This is where God speaks to your heart. It's where you learn to recognize his voice among all the different noises in your head. It's where you recalibrate, where you realign your life with God's heart and character. See, the rest of your spiritual life depends on this. The rest of your life, it's like building that tower. If the foundation isn't strong, it doesn't matter how great the rest of the building looks. It will start to tip, and in the right circumstances, in the right storm, it will come crashing down. So, how's your Circle One life? If you started with us last week, you got to reflect on that question. How are you actually doing this in your life? Are you spending time, regular time, even daily time, connecting with God, seeking his heart, getting to know his word, creating space in your day and your heart for him? It's crucial. Everything else depends on it. So this week, your one thing opportunity has to do with doing Circle One. And there's a million ways for you to spend Circle One time. There's as many ways as there are people, but sometimes it's hard to get started if you have infinite options. and it's hard to choose and know what to do. So this week, I'm going to suggest one way, one Circle One tool that you can use. I'm not going to say it's the only way. I'm not even going to say it's the best way. But it's a good way, a simple way that a lot of people have found very meaningful. So I want you to get that journal that I asked you to pick up last time. Find a new, clean, blank page. And across the top, write today's date. And then spend 15 minutes or 20 minutes or half an hour, whatever your allotment of time is, writing out your prayers and your thoughts. And don't just freeform this. Write out your prayers organized around acts. A-C-T-S, acts. A is for adoration. Adoration is just telling God that you love Him. This is focusing on who God is. It's writing out how you feel about God and the things about His character that today, on this particular day, inspire you. Take a couple of minutes and adore God. This is important because this is getting your mind off of yourself, getting your mind off of your stuff, your problems, all the stuff that swirls around in there all the time, and looking at God. Not asking for anything, just adoring Him, expressing your heart, your love, or your desire to love. That's adoration. Now, C is for confession. Now, confession just means agreeing with God about the truth of your life. Getting it out in the open, dropping the denial, taking off the plastic, everything is fine face, speaking the truth. And you don't need to be afraid about this. No one is going to look at this but you. Tell God about your fear, about your depression, about the place in your life where you know you are out of alignment with Him. If you want these things to change, tell Him. Ask Him to change you. Give Him access to work in your heart to change you. Confess your role, confess your responsibility, and give Him permission to work in you. Be honest, get it out on the table. That's C, confession. The T is for thanksgiving. Now take a moment to thank God for what He's given you and how He's been working in your life. Thank Him for the people who love you and the resources you've been given and the lessons you've been learning. Now be grateful about the things that you have. S is for supplication. Now, that's an old word. We don't use it anymore. It just means to ask for something. Now here's where you ask God specifically and by name for the things you'd like Him to do for you. Jesus said to His disciples that they didn't have because they didn't ask. Well, ignore for a moment any uncertainty you feel about how prayer works, about the physics of the whole thing, and just trust that Jesus knew what He's talking about. Ask for what you need. ACTS, adoration, confession, thanksgiving, supplication. Write out your prayers, at least a short paragraph for each one. If you're new to focused prayer time or new to writing out your prayers, then just spend a couple of minutes with each category. I know it sounds simple, I know it sounds formulaic, I get that, I don't like formulas either. But as much as we want to rush on to something that seems more elevated and sophisticated, we have to remember that this is how we learn. Richard Foster said that in order to learn how to pray all the time, everywhere, we have to resolutely begin praying some of the time, somewhere. So, here's the opportunity. Try it out. Take a short block of time to write out your prayers following the ACTS model, ACTS. At a very minimum, do it once. That's your commitment, right? One thing once a week, 30 minutes or less. So if that's what you can do it once. But really, to give it a good shot, I'd like to ask you to try it 7 times. 7 times. That's every day for a week, or every other day for 2 weeks, or a couple of times a week for a month, whatever pace seems right for you. You can't build a building without a strong foundation. And your Circle One time is that foundation. It's time to stop saying that this is a good idea. It's time to stop saying that you want to know God's will for your life, or that you'd like to connect with God more, or that you'd like to know His heart. It's time to stop saying that and to do something about it. It's time to create some space in your life where God can speak. Today's the day. Just one thing. And then check back here and share what the process was like for you. See you next time.